Hello and welcome back to the No Dig Norfolk Gardener. Now, if you're anything like us, then you're inundated with runner beans and French beans. Now, although things have been really hot in the UK, I have to say this has been one of our best years ever for runner beans and French beans. They just keep producing. And I'm having another harvest today, and we're out here virtually every other day harvesting. And when I show you the basket, once I've just finished the harvest, then you'll get an idea of the sort of harvest we're getting every other day from these plants. And I have to say that I put it out there a couple of videos ago, was it? About whether you would like to know any of Mrs. W's recipes or how we go about preserving our vegetables when you get gluts like this and you have good years. And the response we got back was amazing, so really a big thank you for that, because that's given us a few ideas so that not everything is samey and always seeing me either sowing something or harvesting something, although you know that's important in itself and it will always remain a dominant part of the channel. But by the responses I got back, it struck me that actually I do have quite a lot of subscribers that are quite new to this gardening lark. And one of the biggest questions that we actually got asked across all of our social media platforms was things like beans. How do you freeze them? How do you go about that? So we're going to kick off this little series of videos, and the first one being how you go about freezing runner beans and French beans. Now, a bit later on we'll also be filming Mrs. W actually making some chutneys and things with her runner beans, because she does some really quite interesting things with her beans. But for now, what we do need to do is to get these harvests in and get these frozen, because then what we can do, we can enjoy this lovely summer taste of beans all the way through the winter. But one thing I would say is that if you're going to freeze anything, not just beans, although we're concentrating on beans today, you want to fresh these beans at their freshest moment. So I'm going to continue with this harvest, and then we're going to go straight down to the house and we're going to freeze them. If you leave them in the fridge for a few days, they lose their crispness, they become a bit more rubbery, and the taste starts to go. So it's all right if you want to leave them there, you know, for a couple of days and then have them for a meal, you know, that's fine. But when you want to freeze something, you want to freeze it at its absolute best. And the great thing is, as I say, they give a harvest like this every other day, sometimes every 3 days, it just depends. So don't worry that you may not have a lot, because Mrs. W has a solution for what you can do when you're only getting smaller harvests. So like I say, I'm going to finish this and then we're going to go down to the house and we shall show you exactly how we go about freezing our beans. You join us back down in the house now, and you can see from the basket the sort of harvest that we've got. So what are we going to do with these, Mrs. W?
We're going to start off with the French beans, and we're going to wash those first of all. We've already got the pan of water on the hob ready to bring up to the boil. So I'm just going to give these a quick wash. Right, so we have the beans washed. And I just like to gather them up. I freeze these whole. You can cut them up into smaller pieces if that's what you want to do, but I only ever take off the end, just the tips of the end where they are attached to the plant.
But you could take the other end if you wanted to, could you?
You can cut the other end off, yeah, that's fine, but okay. I quite like the other end, I think they look quite cute. here the water's coming up to boil, so we're getting on really well with this. That's good. A few more to do.
It's a really good, quick way to do it, because if it was me, I'd be doing them all individually.
If I can save a minute or two, anything, that's good to me. The water is just about up to the boil, and as soon as it is, we're going to pop these straight into the boiling water, bring it back up to the boil, and just boil them for a couple of minutes. In that time, I'm going to put some cold water into a large bowl that I've got, and as soon as they have had the 2 minutes boiling, we will strain them, or take them straight out of the hot water, plunge them into the cold for them to cool down quickly as possible, so to stop the cooking process and get them ready to go into the freezer. Okay, so we've got a nice boil going on there at the moment, so I'm going to just tip those beans straight in there and wait for them to come back up to the boil. This stage is what we call blanching, and you do that to partly cook the beans so that they keep their colour and texture and flavour in the freezer, and you can freeze them for longer than if you were to. You can just freeze them directly from fresh, but they don't keep so well in the freezer if you don't do the blanching process.
So that was something I'd really be quite confused with. So once you put them in there, you don't start the clock ticking for the 2 minutes until it comes back to the boil.
No, you have to wait for the water to come back up to the boil, and then you just leave it for 2 minutes boiling. And you can see it's now boiling through. The bubbles are coming up through the beans. We have had the 2 minutes. So I'm going to take that back over to the counter. Just quickly now, I've got the bowl of cold water beside me, and I'm just going to put them straight in. So that stops the cooking process as quickly as we can. Now this will, because these are hot, the cold water will become warm quite quickly, so I'm going to need to refresh the cold water. So I've just refreshed the water. I actually tipped the water out onto some of my plants outside, as the things are a bit desperate at the moment. And I've refreshed it with some more cold water, and I'm just tipping them back in now. I'll leave them there just for a couple of minutes longer. The beans are now nice and cool, and so what we're going to do now is I've got the old trusty tray which just fits nicely into my freezer. And I'm just going to put a clean tea towel down onto the thing and just pick the beans out, give them a bit of a shake, and spread them out onto the tea towel so that they're...
Can I ask a question, Mrs. W?
You can.
Why are you putting something in the freezer on a tray?
Well, the reason I'm doing it like this is, if you put them, you could put them just straight into a bag as they are here now, but they would all freeze together as a clump. So you would have to take them all out as a clump and use the whole bag in one go. Whereas what I'm doing here is I'm individually sort of freezing them, so that once they've been in the freezer and have frozen singly, I can then put them in a bag and take out just as many as I need per meal.
So that's why they come out so freely.
Yes, yeah. And that goes with anything really that you freeze in. If to freeze them, like open tray freeze them and then put them into the bag after they're frozen, then you can just take out as much or as little as you wish. So there they are, ready to go into the freezer. That'll take about an hour for them to freeze. Hard enough for me to be able to put them into a bag, but then I'll put them straight back into the freezer and they will continue freezing. Now onto the runner beans, which are done in very much the same way. It's just a case of with these I usually chop them. With these smaller beans that Mr. W prefers this size, I would simply just take the top off and slice them into pieces, sort of 1.5 inches, something like that. And with the larger ones, which I tend to prefer, again take that end off, but I would slice more through the bean if I can, like so. So you get the bean in it. This is a variety which isn't really very stringy at all, so that's good. Sometimes you do get the more stringy ones, and you need to, with that, take the edge off. So I just use a potato peeler if I feel that they are, and just simply run that down the edge, either side, and then just slice them into the size that I need. As we did with the French beans, we're just going to tip the runners into here. It's the same water that we used for the French beans. Tip them in, and again bring that back up to the boil. Blanch them for 2 minutes. And there's the runners done. The frozen French beans, so they're all nicely individually frozen now. All we need to do is take our freezer bag, date and label it, and put the beans in. And then the next time you do a batch of blanching of the same beans, you can just add them into this bag at the end, and just keep going until the bag is full. All you need to do now is make sure that you squeeze any air out that's in the bag before you tie it. I'll just do a loose knot or loose tie so that we can get easily into them again. So I shall do the same with the runners, and I'll pop those back in the freezer. And these will keep in the freezer for up to 12 months, but they're at their best in the first sort of 6 months really. So, but you can still eat them after that.
So there we are. That's how we go about freezing our French beans and runner beans. Now, I do hope that you have found this useful, and for anybody that hasn't done this sort of thing before, that you now have a fairly good idea on how you can prolong eating the taste of summer by preserving these lovely beans by freezing them. Do let us know in the comments down below if you do anything different, if you have different ways and you go about freezing your beans differently. Let us know exactly what your harvest were like. Are you getting an absolute abundance of harvest like we are? And I have to say, I'm really quite surprised in that, given just how dry it has been here in East Anglia. And we shall see you on the next one.